Good morning. We'll go ahead and get started here. Thanks for joining the Leveraging AI in the Lab session. My name is Macy Hewitt. I am the Director of Member Engagement and Eau Claire Presence at BioForward. I'd like to thank CT Access for sponsoring this session and welcome up Scott Hirschfeld.
Welcome, everyone. Happy to be sponsoring BioForward and excited to be around so many people that are advancing innovation with science. I'm Scott Hirschfeld, president of CT Access, and we help organizations work smarter and more securely through two core services. One of them is business process automation solutions. So we use AI and workflow automation to streamline manual and repetitive tasks. And that's in a variety of different organizations. One example, though, is some work we've done for MilliporeSigma in their package testing department in Milwaukee to automate that whole package testing process. And the statistics show that we cut reporting and approval times there by 85% as a result of that solution. And then second, we do managed IT and cybersecurity for businesses usually with 10 to 200 people. So we kind of fill that entire outsourced IT department for them. So that's us. I'd love to connect with any of you who have an interest after the session. We're in the exhibit area downstairs. With that, I'd like to welcome our speakers today. We have Matt Friedel, co-founder and executive vice president of Milwaukee Venture Partners Angel Network. Adam Steinert, chief technology officer at Yahara Software. Peter LaViolette, MD, professor of radiology from the Medical College of Wisconsin, and Leonardo Salado, head of information technology from FUJIFILM Cellular Dynamics. Let's give them a hand.
Go ahead, gentlemen. Good afternoon. As Scott had alluded to, my name is Matthew Friedel. I have the privilege of moderating this panel. We had a session before this, so I think you guys will be very engaged about the conversations we're going to have. I promise this is the only thing that I'm going to read, but I want to make sure that we get level set expectations here. Today we're going to explore how AI reshapes biohealth labs. We're going to discuss innovative ways that labs use AI, machine learning today, consider the cost-benefit analysis of their development and use, and then discuss the impacts of the techniques on existing and new science. So I will open it up with the first question. Leonardo, Adam, Peter, can you describe how you're using AI in your labs or your organizations?
Sure, I can start. Well, there are many different ways we are actually using AI at the moment at FUJIFILM, starting from, let's say, the labs. And for those who doesn't know, Cellular Dynamics actually work with iPSC technology. So we convert blood cells and skin cells into stem cells, and then we have a differentiation process that differentiate that into different cells. So there is a lot of AI working on supporting those processes, but as MIT, not the scientists in the room, we also use AI for many tasks within processes and in the industry. So for example, working with SOPs, I think all of you work with a lot of SOPs. So how do you compare those? How do you improve processes within putting together your SOPs and stuff like that? We also use AI on CAPAs and also use AI in different processes within the logistics area and supporting also other processes within the lab and manufacturing processes.
All right. My lab at the Medical College of Wisconsin is focused on rad-path correlation or radiology pathology correlation. So we recruit patients, for example, in two different projects. One's in brain cancer, one's in prostate cancer imaging. For example, patients that go to surgery, we 3D print a custom slicing jig so that we can section the prostate to match the patient's MRI scan. And then we slice, stain, digitize the tissue, and then
we align that to the MRI and train AI models to essentially predict the underlying cancer characteristics from the MRI scan alone. So at all levels, AI has sort of infiltrated our lab. We use it at the pathology level to automatically annotate where cancer is and how aggressive it is, as well as on the radiology side of things to map out where the cancer is and how aggressive it is. And then, of course, we use the large language models to help write grants and to frame out first drafts of things.
So at Yahara Software, we're a consultative software development company, so we get the benefit of actually getting to work with a large number of companies in the biohealth, biotech space on a myriad of different projects, everything from image recognition, object detection, to innovative solutions, one in particular with some early stage companies accelerating physical therapy by enabling wearable technologies to be imaged by patients and sent to physicians to map their progress. And then in our own work in the software development field, the opportunity to accelerate the development processes, everything from the code to the collaborative processes with our partners to bring products to the marketplace.
So twofold follow-up question, and any of you guys can chime in on this. I know that there's always a lot of hype associated with AI. I think one of the benefits of having things like this is talking about practical applications. What are you most excited about, or where do you feel is the most impact, and how does that compare to what you've traditionally done in your respective businesses? Anybody want to chime in on that one?
Sure, I will. I mean, I think even at the keynote this morning, you heard Tim mention something that I think was very important, which is the accelerating of almost just everyday processes, the things that we do every day, particularly with large language models like the OpenAIs, the Claudes, and almost everyone in our organization, and I'm sure yours as well, has the ability to leverage some of these tools to make what they do go faster, improve, say, research, a research project, or to gain knowledge, get things done and completed faster. That might not be the most. It may not feel innovative in the task in and of itself, but I think collectively, that's maybe some of the engine that's allowing us to move faster, across the board in this and every other industry.
Yeah, I agree. And it takes a lot of time that people would need to be working on documents, finding things, and the AI supports us actually getting to an easier answer and a faster answer. So we have situations where researchers are looking for documents and in some cases, for example, intellectual property, and it's very hard to get to answers. And when you use AI to support those kind of processes, it makes things much faster, actually. So,
any insights, Peter?
Yeah, I think oftentimes students come to our lab without a lot of coding experience, and I just tell them, well, get a first draft with Claude. Like it's changed the way that we teach. It's changed the way that we think about problems. I can do analyses myself now that I used to have to spend months coding in MATLAB. I think just that transition has been really fruitful. My software engineer constantly has these tools up. My students are all using it. And I think I'm in the business of science. We have data sets. We need to process the data. We need to publish, and I think it's changed the way that we do that. So I'm very optimistic about that.
That's a great answer, and I want to leverage off of that. And any of you can chime in on this. What would you say is the quickest win for adoption inside of your lab? Can you give an example? Everybody's here probably saying, we would love to pilot this in our sort of organization. What would be an easy win for adoption into an organization? Or what has been your experience with this?
Well, we've worked with a number of companies that are asking that very same question, right? Like, how do I start, right? Where do you pull that in? And I think the most important question is, what are your challenges, and what are things that you can test, right? Where do you find that you could be more efficient, and how do you start kind of leveraging that? How do you build sort of trust within an organization that these tools can be impactful? And I think it's finding something small, whether it's like an example like Leo said of searching through documents or doing some of that sort of like a research type task. But how can I take the work that I'm doing today and compress maybe some of the this takes me a long time to maybe go through all my emails, or this takes me a long time to sort of sort through 100 different academic papers to maybe get to what I'm looking for. I think the research side of this, maybe getting that next step, a search is maybe a first step in it, that everybody kind of struggles with these problems. Being able to bring that into your daily workflow and accelerate what you're doing, so you can get to the more important science.
Can I chime in before I'd like either Peter or Leo to follow up? I have a slide in one of my decks. I teach at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee as well. And in there, it's 30% is trying to identify what is the problem you're trying to solve. 25% is getting clean data. Would you guys agree with that? So half the battle is not actually doing the analysis. It's identifying the problem and then getting a good set of data in order to be able to analyze. Is that fair?
Very much so, yeah. I think that if I look back on the last 15 years of research in radiology and pathology, I've spent that time building data sets that have been, that I can hand to a student or to a postdoc and they can run with. And cleaning and curating data is what is the first step, obviously. And it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort. And I think that has been a challenge over the years, but we've built out our cohorts, and as we've recruited more and more patients to our studies, we've had to take a step back and reorganize things. But yeah, I think the easiest adoption, I think, is what do you spend your day doing, and how what hours can you replace? What can use these tools to really automate, I think. And for me, it's like writing letters of support for things like that, where it's just, it would have taken me an hour of my time, and instead it takes 15 seconds. Yeah, I don't know if you have.
Yeah, well, actually, just back to how do you select cases? Actually, for me, is go talk to people on the floor, make surveys actually, and try to understand where you can actually benefit of using AI is the first thing, especially in the industry where you have so many applications of AI. And then make sure you have a very good classification, data classification process, especially in such a regulated industry like ours. Make sure you know data is being used by those who can actually access data. And we are talking about different regulations here, CFR 31, Part 11. We are talking about HIPAA, which is even more restricted. So make sure you have a very good classification process. And also make sure that data is available and clean before you start putting together low-hanging fruits with use cases as you present them as an initial one. Don't try to fix everything with AI from the beginning. Choose first three to five good use cases where you can show the benefit of it, and then evolve from that.
I think Scott Page from the University of Michigan has a phrase that I love. Companies are trying to deal with the rolling hairball of data that they collect on a daily basis. I gave a presentation to it and to a manufacturing company, and they were asked about how clean their data was, and everybody kind of put their heads down and was a little suspect. So that's a challenge, right? Let's talk about the data piece in our conversation when we prepped here. How do you deal with the privacy component of it? So we've already referenced these large language models, Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, whatever your favorite, Perplexity, whatever your favorite one is. However, you don't want to be plugging your proprietary data into one of these public domain large language models. What is the policy? How do you deal with that? What do you recommend inside your organizations?
I would say first off, when you're answering that question, it is an organization-wide question, and so you need to be thinking about this holistically as a policy across the board, so that you need to have tight integration between the management, IT, science, and understanding what's the critical data and what are the options for using it. So if you're talking about large language models, are you a large enough company where you can actually interface directly with these companies and have maybe a custom licensing agreement or something that you might want to ensure that your IP is protected. Obviously, this is a big point for all of those organizations, and so the general enterprise licensing agreements tend to be have developed, particularly over the last 12 months, so that you should be able to have a fair amount of confidence that if you're using the licensed access to these, that you're okay. But I mean, I wouldn't stop and just say it's that. I think there's a lot of education that needs to be done with everyone using those tools to ensure that everyone knows, okay, this is the data that's important to us, this is our IP, and we need to make sure it's protected, and these are the ways that we can do it, and that, just like security training, things of that nature, it's a process that needs to be vetted within the organization, followed, and continually evolve along with the changing technology, because it is changing fast.
Peter, Leo, any thoughts on that?
Sure, yeah. Our very first step when we recruit a patient for our studies, when we pull information out of the medical record, we de-identify everything. It's a very important first step, but then beyond that, our research is funded by the National Institute of Health and the NCI, National Cancer Institute. So we have the expectation that we have to share the data eventually with everybody. So we keep that in mind as well, be curious to see your answer.
Yeah, no, good.
What is the process for when you're training a new person that's coming in? Is there, like you referenced training, is there a policy that's in place? Because from my perspective, I can see students who would come in and happily plug whatever into, what is the process for bringing a new employee on in an ethical and straightforward manner? Have you had any experience with that?
I do. Well, we have AI policies that they need to be trained before they even start touching AI models and working with any of that. So it's something they need to do as they start.
Any experience at the medical college, Peter?
Do
you work with students?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So
Yeah.
we have about 15 people in my lab. That encompasses undergraduates, graduate students, staff members, I love bringing in new people because they bring in great new ideas and new resources and things that they've learned that obviously I've been out of college for a long time. So, as far as guiding them through the onboarding, I provide the data sets and let them sort of figure it out. The guardrails that we have in place are mainly around PHI and protecting health information, and beyond that, onboarding is sort of like, here's the data, here's what not to do with it and what to do with it, and go ahead, find something publishable. We're in the business of science, and find something interesting in that data set, and yeah.
We had a great conversation about implementing some of these models, and the audience is going to be stunned by the statement that I'm going to say. AI can be wrong.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
AI can be wrong. And so the conversation we had about implementing some of these models, getting solution sets out of them, and then communicating that to management. How do you guys do, and I think, Leo, you had the gut check reaction to it. How do you level set your expectations when you're running it to have a sense of confidence in what the output is?
Oh, you have to have a team that is actually able to differentiate into, first thing, what is wrong and what is right. Some models will provide you 95% certainty. So I think we were talking about the small gut and big gut theory that we invented when we were discussing, actually. But it's about knowing which models can actually provide you with more, with better answers, and using your small gut to get that 5% that they cannot work on, and getting those models that you still need to use for some of the applications you have that have a big gap that could be wrong, and use your big gut, and then having the human or the people in the loop actually to identify how do I differentiate those 20% error margin that this model can actually provide. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think that human in the loop is important. Every AI machine learning project that we've worked on has that. As you're developing a model, you have to think of it as an iterative process. Once you've collected your data, you've curated, you know the questions that you want to answer. It's trained, you understand sort of the parameters then it's a continual process of running more, you know, if you've got, like, say, a diagnostic workflow that is enhanced by AI, are you monitoring that? Are you looking at results, having someone verify those in the cases where you may be uncertain? It may give you a probability. This is 90% this answer, or this is 72%. Having that human in the middle to take that, make corrections, label that, and feed that back in so that you can retrain models and improve them over time is critical to any time you're going to implement AI like this, to make sure you have sort of that mindset of continual improvement.
Peter, any thoughts?
Yeah, we think about overfitting a lot, right? We have our data set that we've acquired at the Medical College of Wisconsin on our MRI scanners that are located on site. How do our AI models then generalize beyond MCW? So we've built collaborations, you know, with, we just recently received a big grant with a colleague at UCSF. They've trained an AI model with biopsy cores. We've trained an AI model with autopsy tissue. And the whole project is really bringing those two models together and then being able to also account for different treatment differences in patients with brain cancer. So we're constantly thinking about that and the generalizability, and the big gut check is trying our models on external data sets from other institutions. And we are lucky there are some great databases online that have well-curated MRIs, for example, in brain cancer and prostate cancer. But they can only go so far. So it's really building collaborations and testing these things sort of like, you know, offsite, I think is really the gold standard for us.
So when I have my students working on machine learning models, we do old school analytic stuff, looking at the data, making assumptions on what we think the results would be, run the models, and then compare and contrast that. So we just did a sentiment analysis, and it was different from what the machine learning, so there's a confidence level sometimes associated with the results, and then you have to communicate that to management, et cetera, and the rest of the organization. Let's talk about like cost and impact and running pilots. Can you either talk about strategies in your own organization, how you do that, or some experience in that? So people in the audience here are probably sitting inside their company's organization saying, we would like to run pilots. What is a successful strategy or techniques that you've used in order to go from a pilot to something that's fully implemented? Anybody want to share their experience on that?
Again, and I think I referred to that in one of the previous questions, but make sure you start small on the adoption, actually. Choose 3 to 5 use cases for the first year and a half that have a good chance of being successful and delivering the result you actually expect from beginning. Don't try to solve everything at the same time, because this is not going to work well, because you will have cases of AI applications that will fail, that's for sure. So go small, choose 3 nice cases, present that to your management, get the POCs out, the use cases tested, make it happen, put it in production, and then you go to the next one.
Yeah, I think being successful really does start with the what's the value of this this solution. If I want to automate something with AI, what time is that? What time, energy, cost is that going to save the organization? And then go back and ahead of time start looking at a couple big things. Number one, we've talked a little bit about this, but do I have the data to be able to answer this? I think, Matt, you said, maybe it's 25% of the time is just, sorting through data. It's probably more than that, right? Getting a good, solid data set to support, your process is oftentimes more complex than you think. So,
And in many cases, you need to fix the process underlying that actually generates that data. In many cases, it takes more time to do that than actually getting the data itself. So,
right,
yeah.
right. And so, so start small. Don't try to boil the ocean. Most solutions that integrate or implement AI have components. They have maybe multiple models that get to a final solution. But start the POC with something small, a tractable solution that you feel confident you can get an answer in, and that you have a good bounding for what that time is going to be. Build some small successes like that, and then build off of those successes to bring more and more of these types of solutions into your organization.
Peter, thoughts?
I think scaling. I'm just thinking back on our lab and just how we've had to scale over time with the digital pathology slides that we have. Each file can be like 30 gigabytes, and we have 10 of those per patient, 550 patients. So over the years, we've had to scale, and the students, they test everything locally, and then on one or two of those samples, and then deploy those models on all of it, and it's taken us years to build the infrastructure to be able to do that. The Medical College of Wisconsin has a research computing center that has GPUs and storage, but we've grown so big that we've had to build our own infrastructure within the Center for Imaging Research with our own cluster of servers, and just over the years, it's been a slow grind, but we've had to adapt and sort of build it out ourselves. So it's been an interesting struggle, I'd say.
I think that's excellent advice. The analogy I always use is, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? So you got to start out small with pilots that you think are basically going to be successful. Can you guys share or talk at all a little bit about like the return on investment? How do you fund or pilot these projects? Is there guardrails in place already inside your organization? Can you talk a little bit about that? How do you go to a management team and say, we think we're going to spend X and this is going to be the return on investment, or am I not phrasing the question correctly? I don't know if anybody wants to chime in on that.
I think if you want to, if you're thinking through the ROI, right, I think the right question to ask at the beginning is, okay, this is a process that we're going through. Maybe I'm optimizing instrument utilization. Can I optimize things so that I can run one fewer instrument or do X percentage more? You need to find, okay, what is your target goal, right? And then what is the business value of getting there? And then sort of like back that down to your pilot. So having very clear strategies and sort of checkpoints along the way to say, okay, to get from here to here, it's going to cost this much. Our end goal is to have this reduction in cost over time, and just being very pragmatic and willing to adjust as you learn more. If you find a solution is not either developing as quickly as you think it should, and perhaps that leading to higher cost. Just having check-ins along those milestones to see, is this really panning out the way that it should or we expect? And if not, having the ability, maybe it's okay, this isn't going to work, and it may never work with the technology we have now or the data that we have now. and being able to, you know, have those frank conversations with management teams, with executive teams on progress, problems, and mitigative solutions. So maybe we have to go back to the drawing board and rethink things. It's, I think at the end of the day, it ends up being, you know, a fairly simple, you know, business discussion, but you just have to keep that in mind in the planning along the way as you're implementing.
So again, it's fair to say half the battle is trying to identify what is the problem you're trying to solve and having rich, robust data to back that. Is that fair, gentlemen?
Sure.
Yeah.
Can I give a practical example? And
Absolutely,
I was mentioning
yes.
actually AI applications for SOPs. So I'll put everyone in my shoes right now. So my first day at FUJIFILM, everyone was super nice and I was talking to everyone. And then my second day, they put me in front of a computer and they sent me a list of 112 SOPs, some of them with 80 pages that I have to read so that I'm able to do my own job, right? Many of those we might consider was not really applicable to what I do in IT, but others, yes, as part of the leadership team for FUJIFILM. So to the ROI, if someone was using AI to streamline that and give me only the information I really need to know to do my job, it would save me a lot of time that I could use on the core business instead. So I think ROI is not only measured by how many hours they are saving from me, but how much I can use of my time on the core business and try to deliver on different projects we have within the IT in this case. But everyone sitting on different seats, they would have to come to FUJIFILM in a position like mine and read 112 SOPs, very hefty ones, to be very honest with you. And I think this is not only FUJIFILM, all regulated business have the same issues here. So if you streamline that process, that saves a lot of time for people to maybe in the commercial area go and make money, in production to go and have better yield on their products. So that's where I think AI can really support, and that's how I would sell to management that we have a return on investment on that.
Thoughts, Peter?
Yeah, from our perspective, so I think of things as a scientist. So what is the institution investing in me for? And that's to get grants, right? So for us to compete in the grant space, we have to have the infrastructure, we have to have the resources, and then we also have to have the data sets. And I think what we've built at the Medical College of Wisconsin is unique in that we have an amazing pipeline. We're able to recruit patients, and we have a very large patient volume compared to other institutions. But yeah, the return on investment, I think, in my mind, it's buying the microscopes that allow us to collect the images, buying the GPUs that allow us to analyze the images, and then allowing us to actually compete in the grantsmanship sort of race.
Maybe a different approach here. Everybody knows with respect to AI, it's all sunshine and rainbows. But maybe you could share inside your organization, what have been some of the hurdles, cultural-wise, technology-wise, regulatory-wise, anything that you'd want to share with the audience that they say, we should be considering this when we're piloting some of these small win projects that we're thinking about doing? Culture, regulatory, technical. It's such a good question, I stumped you.
Well, I think, I mean, those are all good points. I mean, certainly from our perspective, we work with a number of different clients, and everybody has their own sort of, degree of comfort using AI or using the IP, the data they have, where does it go? Level setting there, but, there's certainly, we're still at a stage, I think, where some people can be suspicious of these tools. People are kind of set in their ways. Maybe they don't trust it. I think, Peter, I heard you kind of mentioning some of those concerns earlier. And I think, education over time, understanding, getting people comfortable with what and how, and, these tools can be used, and kind of demonstrating the innovation that can come from that use is important. Just like any change within a company and organization, it's important to kind of celebrate the wins and give people sort of that little nugget of thought of, oh wow, the person over there, used that and really that's an innovative solution. How could I use that in my own workflows to accelerate my own position? So.
Hurdles, other hurdles, gentlemen?
I think one hurdle is, and again, I'm in healthcare and sort of on the ground, but the digital pathology was brought up in this morning's talk, and our department of pathology doesn't actually digitize slides. They don't have the computational infrastructure or the microscopes, and so we've had to adapt by buying our own microscope and doing it ourselves. So I think they're hesitant that once things are digitized, as a pathologist, they're going to be replaced by an algorithm. But I think what needs to be better understood is that it's not that it's going to replace physicians. It's going to make their jobs easier and faster. And I think the phrase in radiology is that AI is not going to replace radiologists. Radiologists that use AI are going to replace radiologists. So I think hesitancy is big in the field of medicine, but also streamlining is really important. So.
Yeah, I think the regulatory requirements are the biggest hurdle in our industry. So make sure that people only that should have access to data have access to data. And the other one is, especially being a CDMO business at FUJIFILM, making sure that you are restricting data customers according to the contracts you have with each one of the customers you have. So make sure data is not spread in a way that anyone can have access to it.
So we have 20 or so minutes left. I'd like to leave a little bit of time for audience questions. This is the easiest question to answer, and I preferenced this when we had our prep session, everybody smiling. I gave a presentation to a board of directors for a local company, and one of the directors asked me, there's been so much accelerated change in this space, and he essentially asked me to predict the future. So I'm going to give you a softball question here. Each of you, tell me what it looks like in 3-5 years. What does the future look like in AI in your companies and in your space? Easy one, right?
Yeah, I think models will be more advanced and back to big gut, small gut. I think we will have more small guts, the human in the loop. We'll need to make less decisions in regards to the data they actually get out of the AI models. So we will not need the big guts as AI models actually evolve. I think that's what I see in 3-5 years.
Look, before I have the other panelists chime in, can I just make a comment on that?
Yeah.
When you guys are normally doing these models, it's not like a one and done thing. You're normally refining them, you're maintaining them, you're sourcing new data in there, you're doing those checks along the way. Is that fair?
Yeah, you're training the models.
Yeah.
Yep.
I can answer, from a prostate cancer perspective, even over the past 10 years, MRIs have become more mainstream for diagnosing prostate cancer. So I think in that space, what we'd like to see is a 10-minute screening MRI scan that is then fed into an algorithm that augments those images, makes it sharper, cleaner, and enhances the areas of potential cancer, and then streamlines the reporting for the radiologist. I think that's within the next 5 years. Andy in the back and I are working on that right now. But I'm hoping that in the field of prostate cancer diagnosis, there are major changes in the next 5 years for sure.
I think if you look back over the last 12 to 18 months, we've seen an incredible acceleration in the capabilities of large language models, and that's really kind of where a lot of this hype right now is centered around, and reality of actually accelerative technologies. That's going to continue, and that will enable us to do more on those sort of accelerative fronts of how can I do more with my time and free up innovation. at a lower level, like it's like the programming level, the access, the feasibility to develop our own models specific to bespoke workflows within our organization. That tooling is evolving. It's becoming easier for someone with maybe not so much background in machine learning and AI or programming even to put something together that can serve to accelerate something that is that's important to them without needing to bring in perhaps as much expertise. And I think that's probably the big thing that I see changing in the next 2 to 5 years is just that the accessibility of these tools to come down so that a much broader audience can utilize them. And I think that's when you start to see innovation that we maybe can't imagine right now really taking hold and moving at an exponential pace.
Can I make an additional comment on this
Absolutely.
one? So for those who are actually running their company's AI programs and have influence over it, make sure that you do not define too narrow of guardrails on where AI can actually work. Otherwise, you will block innovation within your own company. So just to add to what you just said.
I have to say, you guys did way better at answering that question than I did when I was asked by it. So, before I open it up to our amazing audience, and we have an amazing audience here, any like 1 or 2 tidbits, suggestions you could give to the audience about something that you've learned that you'd like to share that maybe would benefit them when they're trying to pilot some of these programs?
Yeah, I mean, I think we touched here and there on data, and I would even emphasize that maybe a little bit more. We've had discussions with so many people who, that like, I'd like to implement AI in my lab to, for whatever reason, and they simply don't have the data or the infrastructure for the data to support that utilization. So, if you're looking within your organization now, you're saying, like, how are we collecting data to make decisions on? Are we doing that, across the board? Are we collecting the data we know we need? Are we collecting the data we think we might need, or the information that we don't know that we need? Having a holistic plan for starting to do that and making sure that now is the time, if you're not, to start making sure that you have a more maybe sophisticated take on the collection of data, because if you want to leverage that, if you want to use that in the future, you're going to want more than what you have, and starting now is going to be more impactful than waiting until you have the problem. And if you're thinking about, okay, I want to innovate, now is the time to start creating that foundation, and data really is the foundation.
Have you heard the term "data is the new oil"? I mean, that really it is. Any, Peter, Leo, any tidbits?
I was just gonna say, sometimes bigger isn't better. We found just a traditional random forest classifier worked better than a convolutional neural network. So just something to think about. Sometimes more compute isn't necessary. And that specific study was looking at brain tumor invasion and predicting where it is. It's interesting, again, what students find is that just traditional machine learning worked better than deep learning. So something to think about.
Yeah, maybe just, again, fix your underlying processes that generate data first. That's what you have to do. If you don't have good data, and even AI can actually help you fix the underlying processes. So use AI for that if you need. So yeah.
I don't have any further questions. I'm hoping that microphone in there will work. Otherwise, you'll have to be loud with the questions. We will accept little gut or big gut questions, so feel free to chime in on those. And I'll do my best to articulate it back to the panelists. Go ahead, please.
I'm happy to start. I talk really loud too. So I run a big organization, and so I can appreciate how you have to build in structure, but I think each of you brings something different to the table in terms of how do you build a model at the right scale for your businesses. I want to take it outside of that, and each of you touched on it a little bit. We've got just a spectrum of individuals in the workforce or coming into the workforce. What would be your advice to individuals that have been in the workforce for some time, like myself, and need to get that inquisition. What is the first step for them? Assuming that they may or may not have a program at their workplace, how should they gain that insight? And then conversely, for those entering the workforce, how do you ensure they don't over-index on AI and really, truly understand the bits and pieces that they have to have their own brain power behind? So I would just love insight from each of you as to what guidance you would provide as a natural first step, as well as some guardrails.
Thank you. I love that question. I've certainly seen some of our newer graduates that have come into Yahara use AI for things that I never would have thought of before. And it's amazing to see the creativity there. And so I think everyone in companies can learn from sort of that energy. And I'd almost say it would be great if you could have some sort of program with sort of like pairing up individuals, maybe some of the younger generation and the older generations kind of get together and dialogue about how they're implementing it, right? Sharing that knowledge, I think, is very important. I think it's harder for those of us that have maybe grown up without AI to maybe just extrapolate into all the uses, but having more touch points, how people are using it. Again, I think that open conversation of how, when, and where is important. But on the side of what is too much AI, always emphasizing the point that the work we generate needs to be from us as individuals. You can't trust what comes out of an LLM any more than you can trust a random web search, right? You need to go validate that. We always have to have that mindset for analyzing a result and saying, does this really fit with reality? And I think just making sure that everybody in an organization understands that it's that human in the middle, it's that oversight where AI can help us accelerate what we do and not let us get into too much trouble.
Can I chime in on that question as well? Both Thomson Reuters and Gartner does, I think, pretty fantastic research in this area. Regardless of what your industry is, there's probably use cases of how AI is being applied in that situation. That's probably a pretty good first step. Then it's about building a case for piloting potentially one of these programs. That's why we were having conversations about the cost, not only about the return on investment. You can demonstrate, look, this is what other companies in this industry are doing. This is, I think, a good first step. This is a successful case that we might implement, and then this is the outcome. The other part of the question, which, and I'd like you guys to chime in, the upskilling, reskilling part is challenge. Every company faces that. So I've worked with Northwestern Mutual in Milwaukee quite a bit, and they literally cobble together training, LinkedIn Learning, duct tape things in order to get their people up to skill. So it's a challenge, and I think you have to take a look at what swim lane do I want to be in? Do I want to be on the management side of this? Do I want to be on the technical side? And then seek out some of those resources to do that. If there was an easy turnkey solution, all the companies would be doing it, but you're not alone in trying to face that challenge. Thoughts on both of those things, implementing pilots, reskilling, upskilling?
Yeah, I actually had a part of the answer for the question that was just made that I was hoping to bring to the table. Actually, at FUJIFILM, what we have done with the current workforce, the ones that are there for a long time, we elaborated a set of workshops with very basic information on how to prompt, ChatGPT and get good answers out of it. So it's always good for you to be educated in your workforce, and that's how we approach it, that specific case at FUJIFILM Cellular Dynamics. And sorry not to answer your question, I just had to finish answering that one. So.
Thank you.
From my perspective, as far as like learning how to use the tools, I think try. That's my biggest sort of push for students is just like, try Claude, for example. And One example from this past week, I had to do a lecture on precision imaging in cancer, precision medicine and imaging in cancer, and I asked Claude to just put an outline together, and it did an amazing job. And I had to add some things and subtract some things and move things around, but like that process, that first draft is I think where I use the LLMs the most. But then for students, if they're using it to write code, obviously they're going to have to know Python. They're going to have to know fundamentally what the code is doing and which step each line of code is doing. So for those exercises, we sit down and go through it line by line and figure out exactly what's happening, and we debug in bulk that way. So it's important to know the limitations, as you said, but also know where it shines. And for me, it's the first draft is where things really shine right now.
We're going to get to your question. One other technique that I've seen used very successfully inside organizations, and this actually speaks to the leadership component of a company, is doing like micro hackathons. And the benefit of doing that inside an organization is you get your employees to have buy-in. You get their creativity, you get them interested in that, and you can take industry use cases and say, let's do a little hackathon related to this. It's low-hanging fruit in order to be able to pilot programs. If your management is able to do that and push it, I've seen that be very successful. Go ahead with your question, please.
All right. Thank you all for your talk. It's been really a great perspective to have. My name is Yahara. I'm a master's student here at UW, and I am trying to go into consulting, but another part of my job is to train undergraduate students who want to go into research. So I do resume cultivation, and I work with them to build that mindset of like, okay, let's start asking questions that you're really interested in, so the research that you do is really good as well. But AI being such a big part of research, consulting, everything that we do now, I have a little bit of a big gut question, and then talking more about skills. So my first question is that how can we train AI to still be objective? Because AI, if we're talking about Claude, Gemini, etc., it does still have this radical positivity component to it that we've seen in the past. So how can we really prompt AI to still be objective? And do you think that AI is kind of taking away from a student's innovative foundation, innate innovation and innate innovative ideas, and just being able to come up with ideas that are kind of outside of the box? Or do you think it's kind of helping? And yeah, that's my first question.
That's a big one.
That's a great question. Yes.
Do you guys want to?
Go ahead.
Well, I guess I would say, to maybe the last part of that question, is it maybe stifling, our young people's ability to learn or to think or to reason about this stuff? And I think, like any tool, if it's over relied upon, certainly, if you lean on just like a calculator. If you rely too much on that, if you don't impose some of your own thought, your own considerations as to the results you're getting back, certainly that can detract. And so all of us, as we're using these tools, need to bring our critical thinking to the table and understand that it is a tool. Maybe it helps with the blank page problem to get an idea out, or maybe it helps you spark an innovative thought that leads you to do research in a new direction. But I think you need to rely on that coming from you. You can use this as a tool to help you along the way, but that human innovation part is the most important. And I think, to the objectivity part of your question, I think that also holds true. These models are trained on huge corporate data. They are tuned in one way or another, and I think we need to be careful of analyzing the companies that are training them and how they're built and how they're implemented. But at the end of the day, it is on us to, we can prompt them a certain way, but at the end of the day, we have to take the results we get back, and whether it's an LLM or it's a custom-built model that we've created, and have the objectivity to say, okay, I have this result, can I trust it? Can I believe in it? And to go off and do my own research to ensure that it is valid and based in reality. And if it's not, being willing to go back and say, okay, well, what went wrong? How did it go wrong? Was it the data, the training? And how do I improve that over time?
Yeah, I would agree. I think that it's our responsibility to be the objective ones, especially in science, and teaching that to students is really important. That the human in the loop is the most critical piece of the equation.
You set it up.
So
I was just going to say, as an educator, I see it in the classroom. I think it does take a little bit away from the students. The research in this has actually been pretty clear. The more robust, the more diverse your team, including social scientists, the better the outcomes. So the creativity piece has to be answered by having, and we've mentioned it multiple times on your teams. It's not just you sitting behind a terminal, typing prompts. It's level setting expectations across a wide organization with lots of stakeholders. So I think to get the most critical and best solutions, it has to be a team of individuals working on that.
Thank you all so much. That's really great perspective. The second question is kind of more for the students that I mentor, is that should I be asking them to put, like, I have knowledge, competence in Gemini, Claude, and etc. on their resumes? Is this something that you really want to see highlighted, or is this something that students should, like, say at the interview or something like that?
I think that whenever you're interviewing, you're putting a resume together. Being true about your skills, where they come from, what your strengths, your weaknesses are. I think that's all important. It depends on really what you're after, what you're looking for. Acknowledging that those tools exist and that you're capable of using them is important. But I think also even more important is how you can apply those tools to the job at hand.
I would probably ask Claude if she should put that on your resume. That would make the most sense. Is this a good idea, Claude?
But be objective about the result and be critical.
And be objective and critical. Yes. Maybe you got one more question. That nice gentleman has been waiting.
Thank you. So given the discussions in other sessions here about the Wisconsin Biohealth Tech Hub, and the discussions here about how important data is to all of the work that's happening, thinking about that project from UW led by Jamal Matthews with the Wisconsin Health Data Hub, bringing together the data from our health networks across the state, integrating information that's in EPIC or Cerner into an environment that's protected, HIPAA compliant, offering researchers and entrepreneurs access to hourly rates on computers that otherwise cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's a really neat infrastructure for that narrow segment of the data that's in the EMR. Hearing Wendy talk yesterday, it sounds like in the next year there will be more opportunities for federal funding. How does that Health Data Hub grow to create more useful information for industry and entrepreneurs? What if you could have a magic wand and grab another data set? What would that data set be to be in that hub?
Great question. So I can speak to it from a digital pathology perspective. The files are huge. I mean, our lab has a half a petabyte of data, which is more than the Friedel medical record. So having that in the cloud isn't really an option for us because of the costs of accessing the files and analyzing them. So I think using federated learning, as was outlined, has potential. We've opened our data set up to external collaborators, so that it's possible that we could stitch something together there. I think there's a lot of opportunity. in the digital pathology space, but also the radiology space. The radiology images are already in PACS and accessible. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there as well.
I think we're at time here, my friends. Can you advance the slide? It's my understanding that there's an AI workshop. I think if you scan that QR code, it provides you that opportunity. I would like to especially thank the panelists and all the exceptional answers, and I would like to thank you guys for coming here. Let's end with a gut check. I think we're waiting for lunch, so that's an important thing as well. So we appreciate your time. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time here today.
Yeah, thank you, gentlemen. So next we have lunches that are downstairs in the exhibition hall. Feel free to grab one. You can eat wherever within the venue. Starting right now, actually, is the Startup Showcase. I believe that's in the Hall of Ideas next door if you wanted to run in there. Also in this room in about half an hour will be the lateral flow session. And the vendor hall is always open for networking. Thanks, you guys.